What is up, guys? It is your boy Agents with the Forecast, and I am back with another video. And I know I haven't posted in over a year, and I've been promising to upload consistently multiple times between now and when my last video was made. But quite frankly, I've just been focusing on other stuff, and uh, school started again, and I've kind of just been idolizing and putting other things first. But I'm going to, like I promised, try to get consistent when it comes to uploads again. Yes, I'm still into weather, but what I'm going to be doing today is going to be making a first thoughts video for the 2023 and 2024 winter, which I know is one of the most highly anticipated subjects when it comes to around the fall time. So that's exactly what I'm going to be looking at today, and just going to go over models, the teleconnections, and as well comparing to past winters and see what that could determine for the upcoming winter coming up. So we are likely to end, or we already are ending, this very long, I believe it's a 4 year straight of straight La Nina winters that we've had practically. And we are on a very significant and almost definitive El Nino winter, possibly. We are under an El Nino advisory when it comes to the ENSO outlook, when it comes to the 3.4 region. The equatorial temperatures and the SSTs are way above average when it comes to the majority of the Pacific, but specifically the Eastern Pacific, closer to portions of of South America. And they are consistent when it comes to the El Nino conditions. And there is a very high significant with a greater than a 95% chance for this to continue, this El Nino pattern to continue when it gets into the winter pattern. And that's going to have significant changes and as well significant hints towards what we could possibly have for this upcoming winter. So as you can see, we definitely have a very clear El Nino pattern across not only the 3.4 region, but as well across the 1+2 region, and as well all the way into the Philippines, the Papua New Guinea area, all the way into basically across the whole Pacific here. We have a complete change as we've had in the past few years, where we've had significantly cooler temperatures in the Central Pacific and 3.4 region. But the areas that we're really having these warm waters is quite frankly all of the Nino regions, and we have very very warm waters with high areas of convection across the or not the Indian Ocean, the Western Pacific, as well in the Eastern Pacific, where again we do have significant conditions when it comes to hurricanes in the Eastern Pacific, which we do have right now. And even these warm waters are stretching all the not only into the Pacific, but we have warm waters all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. And I'll show you guys in a little bit even warm waters all across the Atlantic. We have very warm equatorial-ish waters, uh, not only on the equator, but a little bit maybe 5 or 10 degrees north of the equator. We have really warm waters, and this is very favorable for a potential moderate to even near strong El Nino this year. You can even see again across the whole Atlantic for those who have been following the hurricane season, which actually, I'm not gonna lie, I have not been following the hurricane season. I haven't really been following weather this whole summer, which I'm trying to get back into. But you can kind of see overall really extremely warm waters across the whole Atlantic Ocean. But what we really want to watch out for when it comes to adding teleconnections towards the forecast is the waters that we have in the North Atlantic, because we have obviously teleconnections such as the AO and the NAO that correspond when it comes towards North America. But what we really want to really watch out for is these really warm waters. These really warm waters when it gets kind of closer to Greenland. That's where you want to really watch out for. And if this pattern continues with these very very warm waters when it comes to the Gulf Stream, which we have very warm waters across the Gulf Stream here, and as well if those continue to spread out north and towards the Greenland area, that could have significant implications for this year's winter forecast. As if we continue to have these really warm waters next to Greenland, that could be really highly favorable for strong blocking. If we do have blocking kind of closer to Greenland and the far upper northern Atlantic, that will be a very significant pattern for the eastern United States, with a negative NAO, with the blocking being more north than when it comes to kind of closer towards Canada. The blockings up here, that would be very significant for eastern troughing, with really no threat towards kind of blocking or anything like that. And if we continue to have these really warm waters in the North Atlantic, and if we do have that cooler weather coming in with all the teleconnections looking very favorable for the next few months, then we can have very significant storms, whether it's coastal rain or even significant nor'easters, and as well as southeastern snowstorms if this pattern continues. So this overall El Nino graphic kind of basically puts a picture into what I was trying to say here. Let me try to choose a different color that would be more visible. Maybe green would be more visible. But as you can see, like I was trying to say, we if we do have these very favorable, with obviously a southern sub. Actually, that's a terrible color. If we have a favorable pattern, which we would typically see with the El Nino, is the Pacific subtropical jet kind of pushing further south. And what that would do is bring a lot of moisture, not only in the southeast, but as well even the southwest. But it will be a little bit warmer in the west, and if then what we'll see with the east. So with the east is why this is why if you live in areas like where I do in Georgia, or even across the whole East Coast, even Midwest, that's why you want an El Nino, is because you have the split. You have the split in the jet streams further west. Oh my God, further west, which means you would have strong blocking in the Pacific Northwest, which would also indicate a positive PNA pattern with lower pressure and cooler temperatures being across the Alaskan Bay. That would allow for warmer and drier weather in the west, and as well for that cold weather and that cold Arctic blast to sneak in with the high blocking to sneak in more than likely around that cooler temperatures will more than likely stay around the northeast. But if we have a lot of moisture coming from the subtropical jet stream, which is going to be further south, you're going to have that moisture. So you're going to have that cold air and that moisture all come together for the southeast, and that's where you get kind of those snowstorms in the deep south, and as well those strong nor'easters that bring in not only snow for the further inland northeast, but as well coastal northeast, so New York City, Boston. Quite frankly, what we saw typically in 2017, like with Benji, for example, a lot of coastal storms like Corpus Christi even got snow. New Orleans even got snow. That's more of an extreme storm, but you're going to expect a similar pattern in an El Nino year. While in a La Nina, you're going to have the opposite. You're going to have the troughing here, and that this is where the jet streams will more than likely split. You're going to have a troughing here. That'll bring cooler weather, while you're going to have kind of the blocking staying further east. But with the moderate El Nino, this will be a similar pattern that we're going to be looking for this year. So, like we saw Enzo stating that they had a 95% chance confidence rate and that this continues into the late fall and early winter. You can typically see, I don't think I've ever seen, and as a me starting weather based on 2018, I don't think I've ever seen a probability this definitive for such a long time period. Uh, I mean, we're basically having 100% for El Nino, because again, we are at a, I think, positive 1.2, which is pretty much a moderate El Nino, and there's no chance for La Nina anytime soon. And neutral is very unlikely for these temperatures to cool off that quickly. We're more than likely going to continue to have this El Nino, and it's basically definitive at this point, which is going to make it a lot easier to have a somewhat general idea of what to expect this winter. But you can see kind of with the overall models that a lot of them are staying actually more than half of them, around half of them are getting pretty aggressive, which above 1.5, and a lot are actually nearing very strong El Nino numbers, 2.5, around 2.3, 2.2. I forgot what the record was for the strongest El Nino, but I know it's around that range. Around 2.5 is like one of the, I think, the strongest El Ninos ever recorded. I could be wrong though. And like, look at this. This is the threshold for El Nino. So very little are even crossing that margin until maybe all the way up towards next summer. But that's still, again, very definitive, very strong. All of them are obviously going to stay that way all the way up until at least the winter. So winter's looking very favorable for the east and south, with this moderately, almost getting at this point maybe even strong El Nino coming this winter. So something I do want to show you guys is kind of the overall anomalies with all of, well, not all, but the majority of El Ninos. Kind of all this is kind of averaged out between El Nino years, and you can kind of see what we want to focus on is November to March. And you can kind of see the overall temperatures um the overall temperatures that we would typically see in like an averaged out El Nino year. Obviously, all El Ninos aren't the same, but this is generally what you would expect. So what you're gonna expect is obviously this is temperature up here. You're gonna expect a lot of cooler temperatures to be uh, specifically aiming for parts of the south. Like I said, it's going to be like a really south. El Ninos are typically very favorable for those in the south, where you kind of see that merge. You have this kind of the split with the high with the ridge, subtropical jet. You kind of see the jet streams merge around the south, so that's going to be very favorable for cooler temperatures, and as well, typically you would have a strong negative Arctic oscillation. So like again, that cooler air gets a lot further south, especially with the jet stream kind of dipping in a weaker subtropical jet or subtropical vortex. And then again, precipitation going to be very specifically for the south. It's going to be very favorable for above average precipitation. Same thing with California. Again, California really gets a lot of that precipitation and lesser threats for like wildfires in the middle of winter or even droughts. So that's typically again the pattern you would typically expect when it comes to a averaged out perfect El Nino. So something I like to do when it comes to like these first thoughts so early is kind of look at what we have now and see and compare to years that were very similar. So right now we are basically looking at around a moderate El Nino for this year, or maybe even a strong El Nino this year. I don't think we're going to be seeing a very strong El Nino. I really think it's going to be within maybe around 1.5 is the overall guess, and that's kind of where you would probably mark moderate, highly moderate, and we kind of see the years those winter years where we saw moderately high El Ninos, and a big year that kind of stands out to a lot of people is 2009 and 2010, specifically for me, as that was when Georgia had the Chris, or not just Georgia, but specifically the Carolinas and Georgia, and as well much of I-95 corridor kind of got smashed by a blizzard on Christmas, and I got around a foot of snow. So 2009 2010 is a very memorable year for those who are snow lovers in the South. And then again, other years like 2002, 2003. I'm gonna be specifically looking at comparing this year to these two winters because they're the kind of the two most recent that we've had. And I think 2009, 2010 is very, very similar to what we could possibly have this winter, which I really want to compare it to. So we're gonna be comparing kind of SSTs we have now and what it looked like similar towards September 2009 and September 2002, and kind of see what those winters look like and whether that could bring us a hint towards what we could possibly expect this year. So here are the overall kind of values of the 3.4 region. So for 2009, 2010, you can kind of see by August, November, December, we're at 1.3. And actually, I think we should look at September, October, November right now because that's kind of where we're leaning towards. We're kind of in that threshold. And that's sitting at 1.0. And we're, I think, at around a 1.2. So very, very close. And then by November, December, January, kind of getting towards peak winter, or not peak, yeah, around peak winter, December, January, specifically for many in the East, that's when peak winter starts, is a 1.6. So you kind of see that really kind of increase. And that's where we're kind of looking at. We are looking to continue to increase in these values with these extremely warm waters in the Pacific. So we're looking at around that range. It's 2009 looks very, very um, similar towards possibly the scenario we had this year. And then what was it, 2002 2003, yeah, 2002 2003 is very similar as well. Actually 2002 2003, yeah, you can kind of see 1.3 for August, November, December, and then it's kind of slowly getting a little bit weaker. So this is kind of on the lower side, but 1.1 for November, December, and January. And again, we still have no idea necessarily where it'll be by then, by December, January. But you can kind of see these are still much above 0.5, which is the minimum threshold for a weak El Nino. So 1.1 that we see in 2002, 2003 is still a moderate El Nino, and we're going to probably be around that range at the same time a few months from now. So this is actually right on the date we're at right now. So September 7th, 2023. And this is what the SST's values look like on September 7th of 2009. So we're right on the date here. And it's gonna, obviously that doesn't really mean anything, but we're at the same time. So we're kind of getting an accurate idea of the comparisons between what we're seeing in the Pacific 2009 at this exact time of last year or of 2009 to what we see right now. So here's again what we're seeing right now: these very, very extremely warm waters in two regions. We kind of see these really warm waters next to or a little bit east of Papua New Guinea and northeast of Australia and kind of closer to Fiji. And then we have, again, very, very warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico and the Eastern Pacific. That's what we have right now. And we see very, very similar trends here with these really hot spots next to the kind of a little bit north west of South America. Very similar, really, really warm waters, right? Kind of closer to Panama, Nicaragua, and those Central American countries. Very, very similar. And again, the overall really warm waters like stretching across the whole Pacific. Very, very similar scenario here. So we can kind of see the similarities. Another similarity is the very warm waters again on the coast of close to the coast of Australia. Very similar thing here. A little bit cooler. On right on the coast of Australia, a little bit different than what we see in 2009. A little bit warmer, closer to Australia. But again, very strong similarities. We even have cooler waters closer to Hawaii right now, like we saw in 2007. So we're kind of seeing that overall favorable. If we continue to see these favorable cooler waters here, that means we're going to be considering a positive P&A where we kind of see these warmer waters sticking closer towards the west coast, indicating possibly ridging, and that would again favor again those jet streams to merge closer to the east United States rather than the west, which would indicate a La Nina pattern. Right again on right on the same date, 2000. We are looking at September 7th, 2002. So again, right on the date here, we're getting pretty lucky with these dates. 2002, very, very similar. Again, you can kind of see. I'm going to change the color here. Very warm waters right off the that general spot where we're kind of seeing a trend between not only this year, but 2009 and 2002 with these very, very warm waters kind of in that area next to Central America, between Central America, kind of South America, and those portions of the Eastern Pacific. Very similar scenario here. Warm waters right off the coast of like Panama, for example, southern Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua. Very similar scenario, even right off Colombia, where we see very similar warmer waters off northern Colombia. And then again, these cooler, this is actually a very significant trend here, 2002. Those cooler waters right off the eastern side, east of Hawaii, and the kind of middle Pacific, very similar cooler waters east of Hawaii, even going all the way to the west coast, which is again very, very similar to what we're seeing here, 2002. And then again, warmer water stretching up towards areas like Papua New Guinea. We do see a little bit more cooler water here than we see like in 2009, and that's a little bit different. That's the one big different thing here. That's where we're seeing our kind of hot spot with warmer water. So that's one only difference. But other than that, 2002 and 2009 are looking very similar in these time frames. These time frames that we're looking at. So it's September of 2002 and September of 2009, kind of getting towards fall, is very similar to what we're seeing right now. So I think we can kind of see correlations between those 2 years, which are again moderate El Ninos throughout the whole winter, which is exactly what we're looking at. So we're going to be looking at what those overall winters were like when it comes to like temperatures, and we're going to be that's going to really help us draw conclusions between what we can possibly see with this year as well. So here's the overall kind of temperature anomaly averaged out between November and February of 2009 and 2010 winter. And you can kind of see 2009 2010 winter was a winter to remember for many. It was really, really cold throughout the majority of the country here. Again, this is, like I said, not all El Ninos are going to be the exact same, where you kind of see these temperatures limited, these cool temperatures limited to the south. Again, it can get widespread, especially if we do have a very unstable polar vortex, which would be variable with El Ninos. You're going to have cold blasts kind of going from Canada all the way across the country. So you're going to be seeing cold blasts frequently across the whole country. But more than likely, when it comes to El Nino, you're going to be seeing more below average temperatures in the southeast, at least. That's exactly what we're seeing here. You can kind of see these darker colors are more below average the temperatures are. Again, you still have kind of those heart of polar vortexes in Montana and the Dakotas, but overall, you can kind of see these darker shades of blue deep in the southeast, which is again your typical pattern in El Ninos, and you're still going to have below average throughout like the Midwest or whatever, but it is going to be cool. It's going to be less below average than your typical temperatures in the south in the winter, while the southeast will be a lot cooler than average. And that you can kind of see this again 2009 2010, cooler temperatures across the whole country, even going up the east coast. So again, if you have kind of that moisture come up from the subtropical jet and the merging these jet streams, bringing in that cold weather and moisture, very good winter likely. And that's exactly what we saw in 2009, which I'm about to show you right now, kind of the overall how much snow the South experienced and as well the overall East experienced in that year. So here's an overall look at the again. Here's another look at the between December and January, or January to December 2010. Very cold again, specifically deeper in the South. And again, you kind of do have spots across like the country where there are a little bit cooler temperatures. But typically, what we saw frequently this winter is a trend is warmer weather across the upper New England and probably even the Great Lakes. But again, we're really looking at that whether this correlates with the Southeast and whether this El Nino pattern that we saw in 2009 correlates with the typical pattern you'll see. And it does, although there are some like flaws where we have cooler or warmer weather across some parts of the East. The majority is, are we having cooler weather across the South in general, like we see in California, New Mexico, Texas, and we're really seeing the really coast areas are really getting that cooler weather, which is very indicative of an El Nino pattern specifically. So we kind of see this matching up. And again, if this year is very similar to 2009, then it can help draw conclusions for this year. Here's the overall snow depth that we saw on February 13th, 2010. So again, 2009 to 2010 winter, and you can kind of see that the South got like snow very close to the coast here. And this is again, this is one storm you can kind of see. Not only is it going to be the South, but again, we're going to be seeing these like lows kind of coming off fronts, and again with the subtropical jet, all that moisture. We are going to be seeing low pressure develop along the North Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to be very frequent, kind of getting picked up by the other jet stream here. So like we're going to be seeing basically a merge of the jet streams. So we're gonna have the high pressure and then northwest, whatever, and then again, eventually the jet stream will kind of pick up that low, and it'll go. If it does, again, if we do have those warmer Gulf Stream waters, a lot of fuel, and again, if those cold waters are west of the low, we're gonna get storms like this frequently in El Nino years. So again, this is the 2009 2010 winter. This is February of 2010. So you can kind of see like lots of snow across not only like the Carolinas, but like deep in the South, like Myrtle Beach uh and even like areas like um the Outer Banks, and even snow in Mobile, Pensacola, like a trace, and snow getting to even areas like close to Alexandria and Dallas. And very this won't happen every single El Nino year. Sometimes this even happens in La Nina years. Again, not every pattern is the same, but this would be a lot more likely to happen in a winter like 2009, which again we are drawing similarities with now. And last but not least, 2002 to 2003, again looking very similar to the SOCs we have right now. This we have a predominantly more kind of general and what you would expect more in an El Nino pattern, which is like the whole East and even central East United States getting those below average temperatures. You can kind of still see those darker shades concentrated across the deep South, and then again that'll continue across the upper New England area. So this is kind of like your typical like expected like um bias type El Nino. Like when you picture El Nino, this is typically what you would expect with those what those warmer temperatures in the Pacific Northwest with ridging, so ridging, and then kind of strong troughing going on in the United States or the Eastern United States. So you can kind of see these similarities. So that was overall kind of the first thoughts I had. I know it was a little bit on the longer side of the video, but I kind of did want to I wanted to draw kind of connections between other winters that are very similar to this year, or possibly similar that could be similar to this year. But yeah, I'm gonna be probably consistently uploading every 3 to 4 days. I will not be posting every day. I'm a senior in high school and I have a life, but I will try to upload a lot more. And thank you guys.